In my last video regarding a smartwatch, I tried out a different format called what worked and what didn't. I actually kind of like that format and I want to know if you like it as well. I'm doing it again for yet another smartwatch, but if you want to see it more often for more products, let me know in the comment sections down below, drop some likes on this video, and of course subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. With all of that said though, let's jump into this. It's Joshua Vergara, what's going on everybody? Here are my thoughts on this latest smartwatch that is super rugged and has quite a few things to offer. This is the Amazfit T-Rex Pro. So we're going to start off with what worked, and the first thing that I love are the looks and the strong build. If you like the G-Shock look, but you want a little bit more in terms of functionality, the T-Rex Pro makes it happen. This is definitely a large and in-charge watch. It's far from subtle, especially with the color that I got, but I do like this color because it stands out more than the black edition while blending in with just enough of my casual and active wear. Now this and the other colorful edition are muted colors of sort of sandstone and blue, ensuring that they aren't super loud even if the design is quite obvious. The design makes it very clear, this is a rugged product. This is a waterproof, mil-spec watch that can take a beating. You can even go swimming and track that swimming with this watch. And all of this is centered around the 1.3-inch responsive touchscreen, covering up all of the connectivity features and sensors. And then there's what is one of the most important parts of a smart wearable for me, which is the vibration motor. It's also quite strong. The haptics are enough to get me to pay attention to any notifications coming in, but even better, it's enough to physically wake me up in the mornings. The looks fit with what this smartwatch is supposed to be. It's all about being active, and in that regard, the T-Rex Pro definitely fits the bill. All of the things that the watch can track go from very simple to very specific. You have things like step tracking and heart rate monitoring that can be done continuously, so you have a simple look at everyday activity. And then the watch will also ping you to stand up if you've been idle for too long. Now, I say idle because there are times when it tells me to get up even though I'm at my standing desk. Maybe it was just a little bit too still and it wanted me to get around and move a bit more. But being told to get up when I'm already up, it's interesting. There's also stress tracking, which is interesting, where it can scan every 5 minutes and give you a graph of your stress levels throughout the day. And it's based on Amazfit's own 0 to 100 scale. And then of course there are the dozens and dozens and dozens of different workouts that can be tracked. So it's been great to bring the watch to the gym, which I'm really happy to finally be able to return to. But I want you to bear in mind that I can't speak much about the GPS tracking because I don't do distance-based training. Now the tracking gives you a great look into what you did, how much you burned, etc. And all of that comes together into a PAI score, which is also known as Personal Activity Intelligence. It gives you a look at your last 7 days of activity or non-activity. This is true for almost all tracking systems, but keeping that PAI score high is a good way of knowing that you're staying active. I always stop short of saying that smartwatches like these are 100% accurate compared to pro-level products, including things like chest-mounted heart rate monitors, and I still think that's true for the T-Rex Pro. But for a wearable that is focused on activity tracking, I think that Amazfit continues to fit the bill, especially considering the modest price point. Now, speaking of active, while you're staying active, the watch remains active, with battery life that can go for days. Now, the watch, as you can see here, does have a always-on display, and having that on brings the battery life down to around 5 days still, which is still awesome. But after that, it doesn't take long on the proprietary charger to go for almost another week. Another thing that I'll applaud here is the simple software. If you're looking for a watch with some added functionality, the T-Rex Pro is one of the bigger examples. It continues the trend of smart watches that are a bit simpler than some of their well-known competitors. The proprietary software is a far cry from like Wear OS, Watch OS, or even Tizen-based systems, but that also means you don't have to fiddle with too much to get the most out of the T-Rex Pro. You might fiddle a little bit, to be fair. There are the buttons that serve for navigation, but I'll get to those a little bit more later. Also, the operating system can stutter a little bit when you're trying to navigate through it. Even the Raise to Wake takes a second for it to actually activate, like, there you go. The paired smartphone app, which is now the Zepp app, gives you a lot of room for customization and for seeing your stats from the tracking. After that, you can change which apps actually send notifications to your watch, which don't give you any room for replies or any specific actions. But what also worked is that this is not a completely closed system. One thing I adore about certain wearable companies like Amazfit is that they're just open enough to allow third-party developers to extend their use. The same goes for the T-Rex Pro, which can open up if you pay a few extra dollars and get something like the Amazfit tools in the Play Store. The app itself might be a little convoluted, but you can customize some button presses and get more granular control over the smartwatch. My favorite thing, however, is to connect this watch to my favorite sleep tracking software, which is Sleep as Android. It's not to say that Amazfit's own built-in sleep tracking is bad, I just like to add these extra layers, which include smart sleep cycle wake-ups, which then of course will use the haptics to actually wake me up at that time while the phone blares out the sound alarm. Amazfit leaving the door just a little ajar for extra development is great, and while my use of such extended abilities might be specific, I have to give it props for even being there at all. Okay, so let's go into what didn't work, and I would actually argue that the design is part of it. You see, a hardcore design that fits the name T-Rex means that it's a bit niche. This is not a watch that you'll be wearing with like a suit or any type of formal wear because it'll simply clash. This is also not a watch that people with smaller wrists, women or otherwise, will find comfortable or stylish. It is just the right size for my wrists, but it's definitely a lot thicker than the majority of wearables that I've seen recently. This thought about accessibility extends further than the straight up looks though. The watch band is not a universal design, making it harder to put your own straps if you do prefer them. This almost proprietary design cue makes it pretty clear Amazfit wanted to make an all-in-one experience. Basically, what you see is what you wear. And while I do like the look of the watch overall, I can totally see why first impressions can keep what is otherwise a pretty powerful wearable from ultimately calling your wrist its home. There are also, let's say, a couple too many buttons. I was really excited to see navigation buttons on the T-Rex Pro, but their actual use doesn't quite hit their potential. You get 4 buttons, and they are pretty obvious with what they do. Select to go back, and up and down to go, well, up and down. But while it's nice to use in some places, like in the timer for precise selection, I do wish they can do more in more places. For example, when I'm doing workouts, up and down could be useful for things like media volume control while I'm lifting, but you have to actively go over to the music app, which you can't even do while you're working out, to make it do any of that stuff. And even then, ultimately I end up defaulting to the touchscreen more often than not, which probably says everything. The buttons simply don't do anything to make them invaluable to the overall experience, much less to add essential unique methodologies to the established norms. But if you're at all used to the more feature-rich or highly capable competitors out there, you might feel like something is missing in this T-Rex Pro. Even I miss the times when I could go over to certain applications and have good smartwatch companions like Simple Fasting, Headspace, Audible, and Authy. None of that is going to happen here. So let's consider something. If I were to call this a sheep in wolf's clothing, what happens when you shed that clothing? Well, I say that phrase because this is basically an activity tracker in a large smartwatch body. So you have to really want this large size and this rugged exterior to justify paying the higher premium. Now, I can point to plenty of other options, some of them even in Amazfit's own catalog, that give you the same level of activity tracking and the simplified smarts, and a lot of them cost quite a bit less. So it really matters how much the style, the build, and the durability matters to you when there are other ways of getting the similar internals and experience. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that the T-Rex Pro doesn't live up to the name of Pro or even T-Rex. This is a watch that I've been happy to wear for the last couple of weeks, but I'm in a unique position where I have other things like the Mi Smart Band 6 sitting on the counter ready to pop onto one of my wrists. And when I look at them side by side, I see the almost $100 price difference or more depending on where you buy it. And whether or not I would pick one over the other starts with a simple question. How much money do you have to spare? The T-Rex Pro makes it clear that there are a ton of options out there to choose from, which is a great thing. It's just that Amazfit's latest sits a little higher up on the hierarchy than the rest. And you know what? As well it should. For more on wearables like the Amazfit T-Rex Pro, make sure you subscribe to my channel. Let me know what you think of this smartwatch in the comments down below, and don't forget to drop likes on this video. With all of that said, we're going to go ahead and call it on this one. Thank you so much for watching. Please take care of yourselves and each other, and enjoy your tea, everybody.